everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Allie.
And we're back. We took last week off-ish, and we're back.
Yeah, gave you amazing content, but we missed you, so we're giving you a full jam-packed episode this week.
It is truly jam-packed, and we did, if you haven't listened to Fits and Kits, we made that free on Patreon, so go check that out from last week. But yeah, jam-packed episode. We've got recap with Helen, who was at Camp New. She was there. We talked to her about it, obviously, because it's epic. We got the Game of the Week highlight, as always, WSL games and WSL table talk, and also some takeaways from covering the Gotham game as press on Sunday, which is what I did. Allie, you were at Everton?
No, so I was at West Ham Man City. So very quickly, West Ham lost. No. And we were sat talking afterwards, and then this girl walks past us in just a pink beanie. And we just all did a double take being like, I'm sure we know her, but we couldn't figure out what it was. And she'd gone in the shop and we just sort of did a walk past. And it was Izzy Christensen who'd gone there to support her old teammates because Everton had played the night before. And so we were all like, oh, it's her day off. Do we? And she could see that we were looking at her being like, and so she came out and was like, you all right, guys? And so we're like, all right. So she's talking to us now. And so, yeah, I got a picture. She signed our friend's rainbow flag that they've got, and
nice.
She was just genuinely sweet. And then one of my friends tried to sign her up for West Ham. He was like, you look good in claret and blue. Come on, you want this shirt? And Izzy was like, oh.
Not the first time that's happened to Izzy before, I'm sure.
No. So she then left, and then she came, was standing in there's a bar at West Ham, and she was standing in the doorway trying to watch the game that was on. And we were like, you can come in, you can have a drink if you want. She's like, no, I'm just waiting for someone. I'm waiting for someone. And it's like, we don't bite. You can come in if you want.
She was like, they already tried to recruit me once. I can't be here again. Let's get into it. You were at the West Ham game. I was at the Gotham, North Carolina game, which was just fantastic. And we're going to dive right in. This is our highlight game of the week. We had some incredible games in the NWSL. Racing took down Kansas City 3-0. They're looking so dangerous right now. The San Diego-LA rivalry is going strong already after only 2 games. That was a wild 4-2 victory from San Diego, but nothing really like Gotham, North Carolina. It ended in a 1-1 draw, and it was fascinating.
Exactly. So it was a crazy game. So we're going to start off by talking about North Carolina first, because they were one that I don't know, did we count them out a bit at the beginning?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'll stand up and say I absolutely counted them out. They had lost so many star players and key midfielders. Obviously, there was a massive culture problem as well. And I just saw this as such a rebuilding year for them. And they're sitting atop the entire NWSL right now. They are the only team with 8 points, and they sit in first place in one of the most competitive divisions of the Challenge Cup.
Yeah, so we definitely didn't see that coming. So it is the North Carolina of old. Why do we think that's happened?
Honestly, I think it's just such a great question, because I think that there's a lot of factors, but I think one of them you touched on kind of a little bit when you asked the question of this is the North Carolina of old. There's something about mentality and winning mentality that can just run deep through a team. And I think we see it sometimes in the U.S. women's national team. And I don't know how to explain it other than it's just ingrained in some teams' mentality. No matter the turnover that they face, it's just kind of always there. I attribute a lot to that. And the second part, I honestly attribute a lot to a couple players, namely in their midfield, who, frankly, I just have to say, I must have severely underrated in terms of being able to carry a team. And I think we'll come on to that as we talk more about this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, looking at this game specifically, we said they led very early on with that free kick. They dominated every aspect of play and possession for the first 70 minutes. It looked like it was a home run that they were going to win this game. I'm surprised they weren't up by more, to be honest, at the 70 mark. So you were there, how dominating were NCC and how they were doing that?
This is so interesting because, yes, they were so dominant. They had over 60% of possession. They were dominating play. And namely, I think that they were dominating Gotham's midfield. So first of all, I think that there's a lot of factors that led to this. The first one being, I'm going to call out O'Sullivan and Dabinia as the two players that I severely, while I think that they're world class players, especially Dabinia, I just severely underestimated their ability to carry a team like North Carolina, because it always seemed like the Crystal Dunns, the Sam Mewises were the ones who had that midfield really more on lock. And what it turns out is that that's not actually the case. O'Sullivan was so dominant in this game at the number 6 for North Carolina. And look, we can get into formations and how Gotham's formation with 2 number 6s didn't line up super well against North Carolina's formation, which was more of like a 4-3-1-2, if you will, with Dabinia playing as like a dropped number 10. But frankly, at the end of the day, like, the center mids for North Carolina just outplayed the center mids for Gotham. And that was it. Like, period, the end. They just outplayed them. And this gets even more interesting in the side of Gotham. Like, Gotham came out this time with a different lineup than we'd been seeing from them. I honestly think mainly just because it's such a long week. They've got 3 games in 1 week, and they are retired legs, and they're just utilizing different players. But the midfield definitely got outplayed.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So we talk about Gotham. We'll hit back. It's the 70th minute. Something flipped. And you can't even say it was a halftime talk, because we're talking about this is the 70th minute. And then suddenly it was like they'd brought on 11 new players. And there was a connection there. There was a spark there that we hadn't seen all game. Why? What happened in that very specific 70th minute?
I think, okay, so there's a couple things, and I did ask about this in the press conference, in the post-game press conference. I asked Ifeanyi Manu that exact thing of like, what changed? And she said something that was really fun to hear, honestly. She said that there was a moment where North Carolina got a free kick, and Kristie Mewis just hyped up the squad in that moment and was like, we have this. We only need one chance. And Anumanu was commenting on it and saying, like, it made her just think, like, all we need is one chance. And she started commenting more on how efficient this team is, which led her to talking about how, I mean, it's so true. They don't need a lot of chances. They had so few in this game, and they still managed to come out with a tie. Obviously, that's not the goal. They want to dominate possession as well, which is what she was speaking about. But, I mean, that was just so fun to hear about how Kristie Mewis hyped up the team. This team seems to really love each other, and they're rallying together. I asked her as a follow-up if she thought, so there were a lot of fouls in this game. Anybody who watched this game, I mean, and we've commented on this already. We commented on this in our News in 10 last week, Allie. The number of yellow cards, fouls, and the horribly inconsistent refereeing that's happening in this Challenge Cup right now is pretty abysmal, right? We were seeing that in this game, and all of a sudden, all it took was like 1 to 2 really bad calls by the referee, and all of a sudden the entire stadium woke up. The fans got really, really into it. Even the press box was into it. People were pissed and people were riled up. And I asked Anumanu, like, was it a combination of that and maybe what Kristie Mewis said? And she was like, absolutely. Like, that helps so much. They'd been on the road for so long, and to be able to play in front of the crowd. I'm going to add my own little point onto this, though, because that, like, it's so fun to hear what Anumanu said, and she was the one who scored the last goal. I'm also going to call out Jennifer Cujo, who came in at the number 6, and they switched from 2 number 6s to 1 number 6, and she dominated the midfield. All of a sudden, it was Gotham's game because she had the midfield on lock, and I just have to call her out because she was a shining star, and I want to see more of Jennifer Cujo at the number 6 for Gotham FC. It was stunning. Like, I have rarely seen somebody play the number 6 that well. It was so fun to watch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you also had the pleasure of being at the press conference, so you got to talk to good old Scott Parkinson about the change in Gotham. He said that the team's got a proper never say die like mentality, and could you see that?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I love Scott Parkinson. He seems to be doing such a wonderful job with his team, and I want to play for him, basically. But absolutely, like I said, it looked bleak in those first 70 minutes, and all of a sudden, they started fighting. And it could have been really easy for them to just roll over and say, this has been an awful game in awful conditions, and it was what it was. and you could see it through and through. There was just something, and they pulled it from themselves. Like, obviously the bad calls and the crowd getting into it helped, but you could see it. Scott Parkinson said he doesn't really know like specifically what happened, but he was speaking about how it's his job to basically like bottle that and help them use it for 90 minutes now. And it's just really fun to see this group. There was a lot of talk in the press conference about how they're just building from last year. They don't see it as building from this year because there's so little turnover, and they're just rallied together talking about how they're hard to knock down and they won't stay down, and they're going to be a team to deal with in the regular season, even though they probably won't make the playoffs for the Challenge Cup.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We rated them, and I'm really excited to see what they're going to be able to do in the regular season with what they've got. But we've glossed over it, but we have to talk about that you were in amongst the action. You were in the press for this game. She's doing her victory dance.
My ego's getting big.
Yeah. So does mine. It's fine. But it's something we've both talked about, and we want to talk about it again on this one, is because we had that great conversation about coverage and how it seems to be only when big things happen or big players happen that the mainstream media get involved, or you get more sources of media. So what was your press conference like?
It was hard to see in real time, like that exact thing that we talk about, because there were maybe 6 of us in the press box and like 6 of us in person in the post-game press conference, plus like 1 to 2 people on the Zoom. It's really not a lot, and the majority of us were from, if not all of us, I think there was one, Stephanie Yang, who comes from a major source and is like really well known, and the rest of us come from smaller outlets like this. And it was just such a clear example. Even these sources that are dedicated to covering women's sports, and I'm not going to call them out because I think that they do such amazing work, but there are so few of them and they have so much to cover. Like, for example, this game was on Sunday, and what was also happening on Sunday? The NCAA March Madness final. And so all of those bigger women's sports dedicated networks were completely focused on that, and there was nobody there covering a Challenge Cup game, which is equally as important. And what really broke my heart about it was these players are professional athletes and they're putting everything they can into their careers. And for them to walk into a press room that's basically empty and have like 3 questions to answer, it's so upsetting and disheartening. And I can only imagine from their perspective how that feels. So just to say, like, it was such a clear picture of, yes, we've come far and we have so much further to go. Yeah, no, for sure. So I've been on like both ends. So my first ever proper presser was for an England game, and that was rammed because it was an England World Cup qualifier. I've done press events where it's been me and a couple of students, you know, wow.
which works well if you want to get content because you get in one-on-one time with whoever you're talking to. But at the same time, it's thing, and like, even for the bigger events, so like, for example, I'm very lucky that I get invited to do some pressers with a couple of the managers over in the UK. And the last Emma Hayes one I did, which was for the build-up for the Chelsea-Tottenham game that didn't actually end up going ahead. There was one major outlet, which was the BBC.
Wow.
And there was myself, who was there in an amateur capacity. There was another gentleman who was there in an amateur capacity, and then there was 2 other podcasters that don't get paid for what they do. And I'm like, this is Emma Hayes,
right?
You know, presser for what is a London derby. It is the West London derby, which is a huge thing in the UK.
It borderlines on feeling disrespectful, doesn't it?
And there's 5 of us, and I've done Kelly Chambers ones where there was 3, and that included Kelly Chambers
for the best coach in the world. But yeah, that is borderline. That feels borderline disrespectful, to be honest. And if I was Emma Hayes, I would be pretty put off by that. She's a wonderful soul who takes everything wonderfully. So I don't know. I doubt she was. And she just went about her day as Emma Hayes goes about her day. And I'm on a tangent of loving Emma Hayes, but that's okay. All right, let's go Around the world, around the world.
We are going to start off in the Deutschland, Germany. Last weekend, what could be the title decider happened. Wolfsburg versus Bayern. And unfortunately for Bayern, they met Wolfsburg when they are flying. It was a 6-0 win for the league leaders and a crucial 3 points over their closest rivals. That league is slipping from Bayern. You can feel it.
Over to Mexico, Monterrey has leapt into the lead with a 5-0 win over the previous league leaders Pachuca. Tigres leapt into the second spot, hot on their heels, with a win over Pumas Unam. Once again, this league is proving to be the most exciting and competitive right now.
Over to France, and Lyon have extended their lead over fierce rivals PSG after a win against Guingamp, and I googled that. PSG only managed a draw in their Parisian derby against Paris FC, so that is a pivotal result in what is a tight league.
Finally, over to the Champions League. We have our Champions League semi-finalists. Lyon, PSG, Barcelona, and Wolfsburg. We are guaranteed a French team in the final as Lyon and PSG face off, and it's Barca versus Wolfsburg. Will we get the Lyon-Wolfsburg finals of old, or will Barca carry on steamrolling?
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football games, including women's football. Want to know why Miedemar scores so many goals? Do you want to explore how City have turned it around this season? Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and sign up to learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for €10. That's €40 off the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
We're going to stay in Europe, as we were, and chat quickly about the Champions League. This was a historic day in Camp Nou. Over 99,000 people flooded the stadium. We all watched it on TV. It was chilling. It was heartwarming. I cried a couple times on my couch. I was overwhelmed with emotions. And our very own Helen Hardy was there. So obviously, what did we do? We chatted with her about it. So enjoy this chat with Helen about that epic day in Barcelona. Helen Hardy.
Hello.
You were at the most historic women's football event potentially that has happened in the past 30 years, basically. I was watching it. Okay, I'm rambling. I don't even have a question other than tell us about it.
I can't put into words. I've been to Women's World Cups. I've obviously been to the WSL. I was at Wembley for the Germany-England game, 75,000. I've never experienced anything like that. And it was like, do you know what sort of summed it up in terms of atmosphere and everything was, I was with my wife, Kelly, and she has been to Premier League games with me, like following Newcastle, sellout stadiums. She was at Spurs, Newcastle. She's been to like massive Premier League games, and she knows how crazy the Newcastle United fans are, and she will be in that section. And she was like, my head is physically hurting from the noise. It was like, it's a different culture out there. So it was like whistling, like the really high-pitched whistling, and then they have a song that goes, Barca, 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 but everybody...
We could hear the song through the TV. It was
my
so
heart,
beautiful.
like it, you know, when you feel like it's like pounding through you. The stadium was shaking, and I think my overriding thing was like this feeling of like, see, I knew that people cared about women's football. I knew it. And like, obviously, from like a fan perspective, I was just sucking it in and enjoying it. But it was so much more than just 91,000 people going to watch a football match, which in a sense that England-Germany friendly was, which was really nice back in 2019. But it was so much more than that because it mattered.
You're gonna make
I remember
me
the
cry.
first tackle from Real Madrid. It was so good that the first tackle from a Real Madrid player to a Barcelona player, the viciousness of the crowd, they were on their feet, they were screaming, they were shouting, they were like violently screaming at the referee for that decision, and it was like a small tackle, and I was like, this matters, man, like this matters to these fans.
There are few things and few games where I feel like you can feel like the magic. And this is going to sound so cheesy, but I don't care because I just love this sport. And this moment was just it was just like a vessel of love, basically, for the entire women's game. And there are a few times where you can feel the magic coming through the TV. And I think that the only two other times I've really felt that were the 2019 World Cup when USA played France in France, and it was just like a rocking stadium. I honestly think this might have been better than that. The other time was the 99 World Cup, but I was very young for that. And it was such a beautiful, I mean, I know it wasn't a celebration, but it really felt like just like a beautiful celebration and culmination of women's soccer. I was definitely teary-eyed, goosebumps, chills, kind of crying on my couch. But what did make me chuckle is you sent a video, and I do have to ask, did you actually get to watch the game? Because you really couldn't see anything in that video.
No. So I shout out to Ella Massar who got us the tickets because it had sold out by the time I went onto the website, and Ella is, of course, married to the Real Madrid captain, so they were able to get us amazing tickets, but we couldn't see a thing because anyone who watched on TV will have noticed the stadium kept on going colourful, and it was like, I don't know who cued it, we couldn't work out who cued it, but like somebody somewhere was like, and now we go up with the colour cards again. So every time the colour cards went up and created this amazing like colour like landscape across the whole stadium, you can't see the game. Like I missed a really crucial counter-attack. I was like, what is going on? You couldn't see through the paper at all. It just suddenly you just got a shadow went over your head. But
I mean, that was one of the things about watching on TV for a moment. It was like, but are there people in the stadium? Because it kind of just looks like the seats. What was really special, was it up the whole game? Because we couldn't see, but everybody's seen that shot where it says more than empowerment.
Yeah.
First of all, I also want to know who organized that. Like, was this the Barca front office? I don't know, but that was gorgeous and just so special.
On the Barca thing, and Sarah, like, I think somebody said to me the other day that they listened to this pod and they were saying, I remember when you and Sarah were harking on about Barcelona and everyone was kind of laughing at you because I was before, everyone was like, Leon are going to win the Champions League. Yeah. People were like tweeting us. Do you remember? They were tweeting us like, "Oh, shut up!" But we could see this thing happening, this magic thing. They were training with the Barcelona men's team, of course, like Lionel Messi and that were still playing there. And this was a classic Barcelona team, and these women were training with them. You could see this progression happening so quickly. But while that's all happening out front, and they're all training with the men's team and getting the same, physios and treatment and everything, in the back, the marketing team are working away, and it's stuff like the mega store. It's things like on the side of the stadium, we've got a big Alexia Putellas, big photograph of her, 30-foot tall. They're preparing these women for the limelight. They're preparing for what was to come, and it was like a culmination of all of this effort came together in 91,553 people going into that stadium to watch a quarterfinal. It's a good game, but it's a big game, but a quarterfinal. Like, imagine what we're going to be like in a few years, and it's absolutely remarkable. But yeah, I barely watched any of the game. I have no idea what happened, so don't ask me for comment because I don't know.
I wasn't going to. I certainly hope the next week is obviously semifinals, and we were lucky enough to have Real Madrid versus Barcelona, and now we have Lyon PSG. Do you think what happened here can be rivaled in France?
I think you know my stance on it, and I'll always be super honest. I just don't think that France has the same level of fandom as Spain in football at all. And I'm just talking like women's football and men's football. I think French people would probably disagree with me, but Spain, they love it. They love it. And I didn't know whether I loved it or not, but it was the tribalism towards it, like the booing of Real Madrid when they came out the tunnel, and Kelly was like, can you imagine being a Real Madrid player that played last week in front of 2,000 people, and it was all like everyone like politely clapping like woo, and this week it's like, go to hell, you fucking shitbag.
Well, were you sat there in a Real Madrid jersey?
Oh, I kept my jumper on, putting it that way. It was scary at times.
For safety, you did not show your Real Madrid. Okay.
I didn't feel safe.
I mean, that says everything.
Yeah, so obviously we all know it ended 5-2, but there was a real moment, 10-15 minutes of 2-1, where Real Madrid scored probably one of the goals of the Champions League season. It was unbelievable, and I was obviously in the Real Madrid family section as well because I was in Babette Peters' seats, like her family seats. So they were all celebrating, and I was like on the peripheries of that area, and it really turned a bit nasty. Like, it was like being at a men's football match for those couple of minutes, where it was like, you could see that they were talking in Spanish, but it was like of expletives at each other and go home and all that sort of stuff.
I mean, for a different and longer subject, because I know we could talk about this for like 30 minutes if we really get into it. That's so great. Like, that's so beautiful that that's coming into the women's game. And also, for example, I was chatting with Allie, and Allie was like, I was at a women's game and some of the slurs from the men's have started to come over. And I certainly hope that as this game grows and these rivalries grow, keep that passion. Like, we love that passion, but
where's the line?
And hopefully we can find that a little bit better.
Can I quickly do an argument? Because I've seen this a lot online, and I've seen it on BBC Sport. We've got people going online, they probably gave away free tickets, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, I saw that bullshit. I just ignored it. That's so stupid.
If someone said, it's so stupid, I don't want to go down that road, but if somebody said to me, here's a free ticket to go and watch snooker, no disrespect to snooker, I'd be like, nah, you're all right. It's the World Championship final of snooker, Helen. I'd be like, nah, you're all right. So
actually, I can back that up with facts. Having worked for a WNBA team and been told to unfortunately go give free tickets, nobody I gave free tickets to showed up.
Yeah,
we can track that, and nobody used them. So it doesn't work like that.
That's not how. If you don't want to go and watch football, it doesn't matter if it's €5 or €500. You're not going to go. Fact of the day. And the second sort of anecdotal thing is that people go and it's a kids thing. But like, I've been talking to Nike this week about football shirts through Foudies, but about this topic, but also what I saw with my own eyes, 91,553 people. The audience is predominantly grown men, and they're not there with their kids, and they're not there with their wives. They're football fans, and the audience you can hear it. Just look at the audience. There are women there, of course. I'd say 70% of the audience were grown men, pals coming together, 3, 4, late teens, like early 20s, 30s, 40s, and they were screaming like their life depended on it.
So happy.
But this common misconception, if it's like, someone wrote, I just saw someone, I ignore it all, but some of it just comes into your newsfeed. Someone wrote, well, I would take my kids if it's €3 because it's a cheap day out or whatever. And there were kids there, don't get me wrong, but predominantly grown men. Like, this is such a common misconception. It's just not true. And I just saw it with my own eyes at Barcelona. It was like, people were there for that game. Like, it was electric. Like, nothing I've ever experienced in world football, men's or women's.
Well, Helen Hardy, thank you for posting on Instagram. Thank you for giving us the rundown of this game. I got chills again. I got tears again talking about it and listening to you talk about it. And I don't know. I love you, and I love this game.
Oh, you too. Should we meet in Juventus for the finale?
Either that, or I'll meet you at Wembley for the final of the Euros.
Oh, baby.
Oh, baby.
Oh.
Let's go.
Thanks so much, guys.
Finally, we are going to talk about the WSL as we come to the end of the season. We've got some tight races. I have to say, this weekend was not full of super surprising results, but there were a couple. So, Allie, what do you think? What was the most surprising to you?
Has to be for me, Tottenham versus Aston Villa. Villa nicking it 1-0. Yeah. Tottenham have been amazing this season. And you know that's true because it pains me to say it. But Tottenham they've been up there all season. Skinner has done such an amazing job with Tottenham this season that they were true contenders. They were flying high, and to lose 1-0 to struggling Aston Villa, who have only just sealed their place for next season. And that is more due to the teams below them doing worse rather than them doing any better. The game, it wasn't Tottenham's best. They were feeling really sluggish. Are they still affected from COVID because they've had their last couple of games postponed because of an outbreak in the camp? And Aston Villa were just really hard to break down. Carla Ward organised them really well. And then it was Pretzelberger who popped up with a goal in the 87th minute. And the problem is now Spurs are 10 points adrift from Manchester United, who are in third. And we don't have that many games left.
I hope that Tottenham doesn't slide too much at the end of the season. Because like you said, they've had a fantastic season. It would be such a bummer to see them slide from a 4th, 5th into like a 7th. Because that would be hard for the ego to handle.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be really reflective of their season because they've had such a great season, and it's just these last couple of games that they've sort of slid. And it is sad, but I don't think they're going to get third. I think they're going to be fourth or fifth, which is an amazing result for Tottenham, but you can't help but feeling a little crushed for them because they were up in it for so long.
Yeah, such a good point. I mean, there was a point at the beginning of the season where they held the number 1 spot. Speaking of third place, we've got quite a little race at the end of this season for the third spot. Right now, United sit in third, but City sit right behind them in fourth with a game in hand and only 3 points behind. So, only a few games left. Who takes it?
Do you know what? If you'd asked me this question in like October, I would have laughed at you that Manchester City could have pulled it back.
I would never have asked this question in October because I would have been like, no, they're done. They're out.
Exactly. But I think it's Manchester City's to lose. Not only have they got the game in hand, but also their run is easier. And I don't mean that any disrespect to the teams that they're playing against, but their last 2 games are Birmingham and Leicester, who are the 2 bottom teams at the moment. In the previous games, they'd beat them 5-0, 4-0. Even if it comes down to goal difference, for example, Man United played Brighton this weekend. They beat them 1-0. They should have and could have beaten Brighton more. And that's what's going to cost them. Yes, they've got the 3 points, but in the end, it's going to come down to goal difference.
And controversial statement I'm about to make. I think it is a bigger deal to lose out on a Champions League spot from goal differential than to lose out on winning the league title from goal differential.
Oh, why would you say something so brave?
Well, because if you win the league, congrats, you get a trophy. But if you lose out on a Champions League spot, I feel like that's a huge deal. You lose out on an entire season of Champions League.
That's true.
I don't know,
even
it's more to lose.
No, yeah, because if you go second, you still get Champions League.
Right. And
So-
you can kind of be like, that sucks, but rules are rules, and let's dominate Champions League. Speaking of winning a title, Chelsea and Arsenal seem to be fighting for that top spot. And both of these teams have played great this season. I would argue both deserve it. I don't actually see one as being significantly better than the other. Who do you think's going to take it?
It's tough. It is really tough. Both teams won 5-0 this weekend. It was Arsenal, you felt sort of like they weren't quite on top of it. They were playing Leicester, and credit to Leicester. They got taken by surprise by a very quick goal by Mead. We're talking the first 2 minutes. But then held Arsenal off for 67 minutes with just a 1-0 deficit, which, considering where Leicester were at the beginning of the season, that was huge. And then Viv struck. And Viv got a goal in the 67th minute, and that everything went then. And they ended up losing 5-0, conceding 4 goals in 15 minutes.
It's really painful. That's kind of like the floodgates opened.
Yeah, but considering the game before that, they'd played Chelsea and they lost 9-0 and conceded 5 goals in 12 minutes.
It's a rough end of the season.
It's been rough. And they're still not quite safe yet.
No, they are not. Well, I mean, I have to say, I think if Arsenal want to keep Vivian Miedemar, they need to win this title. And that's what I do know about this. So you're saying Chelsea then?
I am saying Chelsea because Chelsea looked more convincing. They played Reading, and Reading had already beaten them. Reading beat them in the very shock game of the season with a goal from Deanna Rose. So Chelsea were a bit more paced. We saw different goal scorers. So Beth England was on the score sheet for the first time in a while. She's been getting starts. We saw that Jessie Fleming got a goal. Sam Kerr got 2 goals. And so I think it is going to be Chelsea out of the 2 of them. But the interesting thing for me is Tottenham are going to help one of their rivals to the title.
I was going to say, I think that it's going to be Arsenal because Arsenal's got the much easier path to the end of the season. If you wonder who can win out their games, at least path-wise, and like you said, no disrespect to these teams, Arsenal has Everton, Aston Villa, and West Ham. Okay? Chelsea, on the other hand, has to win out their games against playing Tottenham twice, Birmingham City, and Manchester United.
Exactly. So it's going to be rough, but I think it's going to be even rougher for Tottenham fans knowing, regardless of what you do, you have helped one of your rivals to win the league.
All right, we're going to move from top of the table to bottom of the table because while we will sadly lose a team, we know who we are gaining in the top division. Liverpool have just been promoted.
Yeah, they
So,
dominated the championship this season. They, to manage to clinch it this at the end of March is absolutely amazing. It was Matt Beard who led them to 2 titles in the WSL, went back after some spells at West Ham and Bristol, and now has got them back up into the WSL. It's huge to have another Premier League club backed team. So it was Liverpool's, I think you saw it at the beginning of the season, it was Liverpool's to lose, and they've done it in style.
So how do you think they'll fare? And I think more importantly, this club has a history of not supporting their women's team and not treating them well at all. So how do you think that they will fare, and will this club actually back this team?
It is interesting because they haven't in the past, and I don't know is the honest answer. We saw recently that it took, the actual club a couple of days to congratulate their women's team in getting promoted. They got promoted on Sunday, and an announcement came late on Monday. Mm-hmm. And it's how hard would it have been? How hard would it have been to get a social media intern just to tweet something very quickly? Right. It's
down to the little things. When you don't support your team, it's big things and it's little things like that.
Yep, absolutely. I'm hoping they've learnt their lesson and that they will allow them to have better facilities, to use the men's facilities, which other clubs seem to be doing now, to actually give them the funding in order to buy players, because they've done really well in the championship, because apart from a few, they've ended up with, I don't want to say the B team of other WSL teams because that's not true, but at the same time it was players that they didn't buy anybody specifically, they got players that were let go. And there were players that had played with Matt Beard before. So, you've got Leanne Kinahan, who was at West Ham for so long under Matt and has been phenomenal for Liverpool and is one of their top scorers. And you've got Katie Stengel, who came over, who played with Matt at Boston. You've got Megan Campbell, who's at Manchester City for a really long time, but unfortunately was blighted with injury. So you've got players that have been around for a long time, but they were never top string players. So it'll be interesting to see what their transfer window's like, if they're going to bring some more players in. But then we've seen that with Leicester, and we've seen that where they've dismantled a championship winning team and have ended up sliding down the WSL. I think it would be good if they could keep the players that they've got and maybe just add in a couple of key differences, like they could do with another striker, because Kinahan's been brilliant, but she's also prone to injury. You want to have a backup striker that is as good, if not better, to keep it competitive.
Okay, well, we've had a packed episode. We had NWSL, we had Champions League, we had WSL, and now that all goes on pause because we are headed into international break. We are so excited. We'll be back next week to talk international break, which Allie is so excited for. It is now her favorite type of football to watch.
Woohoo. There you go. Woohoo.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. For the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.